August 4th, 2024. Sundays were always for the wicked in the eyes of Costello. Even after his quick stint with the Bible in Seattle, he never found an alliance with the faith. Sundays are just the day before the new work week begins. Overcome the anxiety that Monday shoves up your ass a day early and find a way to enjoy one of your much-earned days off. This particular Sunday opened up with its own flair. He's going to find a way to study every moment and lock them away in case it's the last Sunday he has free from the grips of agoraphobia or maybe even oddly, a correctional facility. He's got a lot of work to do for a day off. Stock up on booze and food, draft an itinerary free from his old routine of drugstore runs and costumed outings. Since the pandemic has become part of life, there are so many options for delivery services, but he figured let's go old school and resort to the new world in a last case scenario. Fewer distractions will allow him to stay focused on getting his blackout drunk, schizophrenic, and inquisitive as he needs to herd the answers he is searching. It's been nearly a decade since he inflicted this on himself. Technologies have come quite a ways, and he would need to make sure he used them to his advantage, not to his demise. Too much of what we used to have to search for and wait for being right at our fingertips can be what distracts us just enough from our purpose. Costello became sober while watching the exponential evolution of oversharing and overconsuming. It was as though someone was puppeteering this moment in his life while roaring with laughter. He could hear the evil laughter already and was scouting this mission with meticulous attention. He was finally able to showcase his meticulousness again, and it was like a shot of adrenaline right in his heart. He hadn't felt more alive in his life, and he was going to pour gasoline all over this euphoria while lighting a match to send himself back in time. Something came over him while setting up his mental mousetrap. Maybe he should pull a few passages from the Bible. The last time he rummaged through this invasive piece of fiction, he may have captured a rook in his philosophical chess game. If he can corner the second rook, maybe he can finally pin the king and end this fucking game. They were simply words in a book. He would never attribute them to his successes, but he had no problem using every tool in the toolbox. Costello could pull the lyrics from a Frank Ocean song and incorporate them into any technique he gamed for success. Costello downloaded the Bible app on a tablet and stared at it for 20 minutes. He dug down real deep trying to figure out if he was wasting his time or if there was some secular connection to this dogmatic story. Would it give him any insight into how he could reach back into the past and become the dark, cryptic Costello he once showed himself? He played the same game. Just go straight to an unknown passage and read what is written. Why go searching for a passage that meets your narrative? For there are many rebellious people, full of meaningless talk and deception, especially those of the circumcision group. They must be silenced, because they are disrupting whole households by teaching things they ought not teach, and that for the sake of dishonest gain. One of Crete's own prophets has said it. Cretans are always liars, evil brutes, lazy gluttons. This saying is true. Therefore rebuke them sharply, so that they will be sound in the faith and will pay no attention to Jewish myths or to the merely human commands of those who reject the truth. To the pure, all things are pure, but to those who are corrupted and do not believe, nothing is pure. In fact, both their mind and consciences are corrupted. They claim to know God, but by their actions they deny Him. They are detestable, disobedient, and unfit for doing anything good. This evaluation in religion that non-believers are now somehow enemies began to weigh on Costello. So this passage got him off on the wrong foot. In the 2010s, he read bits of Nietzsche. The God is dead statement intrigued him. It became this paradox wherein his lack of faith empowered him as a traveler on earth, because his belief was he had not requested existence. He simply arrived, and as his sense of being, free will, and opinions developed, he became more and more offended by those who shamed him for not having faith in God. Costello equated this renaissance for him to that of the Enlightenment. As individuals begin to find their sovereignty and separation from religion, even if they feel there is a higher power, the simple acceptance of God begins to deteriorate. Reading this passage from Titus invigorated his sense of sovereignty and even nihilism. Anyone who feels I am detestable for denying existence of God has lost their way with the purity of why one should choose faith. Don't believe out of fear of selfishness. Believe for peace and health for those outside of your being. Costello felt as though enveloping oneself with religion for virtue or gain goes against why we should even think a higher power created our collective existence. These selfish characteristics became commonplace in the 21st century. They especially became fodder in 2021, when religion started to weave itself into politics and culture. Costello found himself disgusted as leaders in places of worship began to use their pedestals as tools for propaganda, rather than a stage to promote fellowship and love. This passage from Titus infuriated him, and he decided to pass on reading any further. His years of healing and becoming sober were juxtaposed with this dark path that evangelicals were taking. He began to wonder where his psyche would have gone had he continued poisoning himself while the floods of frustrating information began filling homes over the last decade. He knew he would need to stay focused on the task at hand, since he was getting back on his horse in a very different environment. Costello pulled his bottle of risperidone from a bedside drawer. He gazed at it while he spun the bottle, reading the pharmacy label. So many of us waltz in and out of these apothecaries for whatever prescription our doctor scribbles down. Most times for a quick fix or something to tackle an infection. Not everyone becomes affixed to one of these orange bottles. He'd acquiesced to this particular prescription and branded it to him like part of his nomenclature. It was very difficult to put it away this time. Of all the things he was concerned about, this one was bothering him the most. What will manifest from stopping this alone? Set aside the agave he was preparing to riddle his bloodstream with over the next few days. What's done is done. He must commit to this undertaking. The bottle went into the freezer. He just needed it moved from his bedside to avoid any unintentional medicating. He felt good. Mind and body were ready for the journey. The only questionable aspect to this process was coming off the risperidone. His psychiatrist must have told him 100 times that to wean off the drug would become very difficult the longer he were on it. There are no concerns with addiction, though withdrawing could be a factor. On the bright side, the withdrawal effects were somewhat just what he needed for his tour back to meet his imaginary drinking mates. Costello settled in and gave himself 2 full days off the antipsychotic medication before he began to build back his illusionary ecosystem.